Hello, and this is Stephanie, and I am back with another Legally Raven Hair or Legally Noirette. Mhm. This is legally blonde, except for the fact that my hair isn't blonde, it's black. And so I'm here again today to talk about the law. If this is your first time tuning in, I am self-studying the law to participate in the Vermont Law Office Study Program, and I do one take videos on law subjects. So for the first 6 months, I am learning how to do legal research and writing, and I'm studying civil procedure. So for the next 6 months, you'll be really tired, but we're going to talk about civil procedure until we have it done. So to help me with my studies, I have purchased a subscription to Studicata. And I hope that is the way that you pronounce it so far. I am loving it. That Studicata. And look at it down below in the comments. And this is their LEAP program to help you learn the first year law. Today, we're going to talk about venue. So when I started thinking about venue, I thought, what is venue? Well, the first thing that came to my mind was my wedding, where I can say that my husband allowed me to have the wedding venue of my dreams. But that's not what we're talking about today. Today, we are talking about legal venue. And what is legal venue? Legal venue is a place, such as a territory, from which residents are selected as jurors, or it's a proper place, such as the correct court, to hear a case because it has authority over events that have occurred within a certain geographic area. Okay, so here you go. Think about when you were a kid and you wanted your curfew to be lower. So you tell your parents, Sally gets to stay out until 11 p.m. And your parents say, but I'm not Sally's mom or I'm not Sally's dad. So in this house, you have to be home at 10:15, right? What does that mean? Your parents did not have the jurisdiction over Sally. And we're in the venue of your house. Your parents have the right to make the rules in your house. And Sally's parents had the right to make the rules in their house. And that's why kids are always like, I can't wait till I grow up so I can do whatever I want. Well, you know what? A friend just told me that her mother said, I'm sorry, the only adults in this house are me, dad, and grandma. Adults have their own home, and you are welcome to find your own. So in your house, you have personal jurisdiction in what you do. We're talking about venue for a legal case. So this is which case has authority over the events that have occurred. And part of that has to do with the people that are involved. So that's what we're talking about venue. So now it says here in my notes, it says that venue determines the judicial district in which a lawsuit may be filed or commenced. Venue is proper in a judicial district where. So let's talk first about what is a judicial district. So let's look at the definition of judicial district. So a judicial district or legal district denotes the territory area for which a legal court or law, usually a district court, has jurisdiction. So in the United States, there are 94 federal judicial districts, okay? And that includes at least one district in each state, the District of Columbia, Puerto Rico, and the 3 territories of the United States, the Virgin Islands, Guam, and the Northern, is that Mariana Islands? First time I ever heard of that, but I wonder if that would be a great place to take a vacation. I live in New York and it is snowy. So any place that says island, besides Long Island, sounds like a really good idea. All right, so now let's move on to the state that I live in New York. I believe if I'm counting correctly on this map, there are 13 judicial districts, and I live in Orange County here, so I am in District 9. That would be my judicial district in the state of New York, okay? So in the state of New York, I am in Judicial District 9. So once again, going back to venue. So venue determines the judicial district in which a lawsuit may be filed or commenced. So this is the proper place where you want to file your lawsuit. Venue is proper in a judicial jurisdiction where the following happens. Any defendant resides. If all the defendants reside in the same state. So now it's like, well, okay, well, reside. You know what? I think I know what that means, but hello, this is legally raven haired and this is only my second video. So I'm going to make sure that I understand what every word means. I'm not going to take it for granted. So reside means to dwell permanently or continuously. It expresses an idea that a person keeps or returns to a particular dwelling place as his fixed, settled, or legal abode. What is an abode? What is an abode? No, it's not answered here, but I know I did look it up. What is an abode? What is an abode? Okay, so I know that I have it here somewhere, but I thought I was a little bit more organized than I was. So what is an abode? Legal definition. All right, so let's make sure we understand what an abode is. All right. What is an abode? One's home, habitation, place of dwelling, or residence. Ordinarily means domicile. So we'll talk about what domicile means in a minute. So abode. So when I was just in Houston, my mother-in-law told me a story that they had a pool and I saw some cute little frogs outside. Okay, they weren't so cute when I moved something and they jumped out at me, but they were cute. One was this like the color of like a lime. It was beautiful. The other ones were kind of like a little dark and like dirty green. Not my favorite. But anyway, she said that frogs, they always come home. So they have like filled in the pool and the pool isn't there. But do you know that the frogs put their eggs there and they come back, even though the water is gone? So the frogs reside in her backyard. This is where they come back to, and they've been doing it for frogerations. Is that how you say frog generations? I don't know. The point is, they return. I've heard Toto do the same thing, but this isn't a science video. This is a video about the law, or maybe I should call it law-ish or law light or something to that effect, because honestly, this is my second video and I'm learning the law on my own. All right, so let's go back here to what we're talking about. So again, we're talking about venue. So the venue is proper in a judicial district where, number one, any defendant resides if all the defendants reside in the same state. So they reside, they live there. Number two, a substantial part of the events or omissions, because you can be sued for both doing something or not doing something that you were supposed to do, giving rise to the claim occurred, or a substantial part of the property that is the subject of the action is located. So a substantial part of the events or omissions that gave rise to the claim occurred in this judicial district, or a substantial part of property that is the subject of the action is located. So I'm thinking, is this like land that is like on a state line, or maybe there are different pieces of land in different areas? I live in New York, but on the New Jersey border. So it could be possible that somebody could have property both here and there. Honestly, this is the question that I have that I'm asking. I'm not sure what it means that a substantial part of the property that is the subject of the action is located, right? But the property is located there, okay? This is where the venue is going to have proper jurisdiction. If there is no district anywhere in the United States that satisfies number one and number two. Number one, any defendant resides if all the defendant reside in the same state, or number two, a substantial part of the events or omission giving rise to the claim occurred there, or a substantial part of the property that is subject to the action is located there. Then what happens? A judicial district in which any defendant is subject to personal jurisdiction. Let's say that again. So if 1 and 2 don't apply, then if there is no district anywhere in the great United States that satisfies number 1 and 2, a judicial district in which any defendant is subject to personal jurisdiction. So we talked about personal jurisdiction before, not in a video, but I studied it before. But let's just remind ourselves of what personal jurisdiction is. So an overview of personal jurisdiction is, personal jurisdiction refers to the power that a court has to make a decision regarding the party being sued in the case, right? Before a court can exercise power over a party, the US Constitution requires that the party has certain minimal contacts with the forum in which the court sits, all right? So personal jurisdiction means that this court has the power to make a decision regarding the defendant, the party being sued in the case. So going back to our example about you wanting your curfew extended, right? Your parents, they don't have personal jurisdiction. Okay, the court of your house does not have jurisdiction over what happens in Sally's house, right? So, personal jurisdiction. This is a very important concept to understand in civil procedure. If you are being sued, this is low hanging. I'm sorry, if you are suing someone, this is low hanging fruit for their defense to raise issues, right? We want things to be smooth. So you have to make sure that your T's are crossed and your I's are dotted in selecting the right venue, okay, for your court case, right? I have to say, going back to my version of a venue, my wedding, I'm so thankful to my husband because I had the wedding of my dreams and I picked the venue that just made me. And this is the thing, my reception was going to be outside. So I was really, really worried. But I said, you know what? I would prefer to have my wedding here with the threat of rain than have my wedding, than choose somewhere to be so afraid and have my wedding elsewhere and then the sunshine. And it was 70 degrees and beautiful. It was gorgeous. So venue is important, people. Venue is important. All right, moving back to the law. Sorry for that digression. So now we're going to talk a little bit about residence, right? So we already talked about what it means to reside. Let's talk about residence. Residence for venue purposes, the rules for determining the defendant's residence vary depending on the type of party involved. What do you mean? The type of party involved? Well, residence is different. Residence is going to be different for a individual, for a corporation, or for someone who is not a citizen or a resident of this country, or an alien. Woo, woo. Like, do they have courts on like Mars? Are there people on Mars to sue? Are there creatures on Mars to sue? I don't know. It makes me think about Star Trek or Star Wars, like one of those shows that I really don't like because I'm not that into science fiction. Anyway, back to it. So residence for venue purposes depends on the type of party involved. So if it's an individual, is deemed to reside in the judicial district where he is domiciled. Okay, is it domiciled or domiciled? I'm not sure, but let's look it up. Let's look up the definition so we remember. Domicile, someone's true, principal, and personal home. In other words, the place where a person has physically lived, regards as home, and intends to return there if currently residing elsewhere. So when you go on vacation, you stay at a hotel, or you're at an Airbnb or whatever, or even if you take an assignment, for a few months for a job or something, maybe you're a traveling nurse or what have you. The point is that where you domicile is where you're going to come back to. That is home. This is a really interesting concept to me, domicile. So I remember years ago, I actually was in a business meeting for commercial real estate. And I was talking to this man who did work with homelessness. And so this is in Austin, Texas. And he was explaining to me the homeless population in Austin, Texas. And so, I see people on the street, not in a great situation, people, asking for money on the highway, this type of thing, people sitting and living under a bridge. And in my mind, if you're homeless, you're kind of like a nomad, right? It's like you just move around the city and then you just kind of fall out and go to sleep wherever you are. And then the next day you keep moving. That's not how the homeless culture works, okay? So at least not in Austin, Texas. So he explained to me South Austin versus downtown versus North Austin homeless, and the different cultural nuances, and the fact that the people who live downtown, they pretty much you weren't confused about where they domicile because they stayed there. Most of those people at nighttime would go and stay at a place called, I believe it was called the Ark, the homeless shelter. And so, they had to leave during the day and they wanted to be close by because they're going to go right back in there, right? He said that many of the homeless people in the other communities, you'd see them on the bus and they would go about their daily activities. But even though they were homeless, it really was that they didn't live inside of a building, but they had a home. And so no matter where they were during that day, they would come back to that location because that is where they were domiciled. And it's so funny because it really changed the way that I started looking at things, because as I would be driving in the car, or mostly riding in the car when my husband was driving, because it wouldn't be safe to be kind of like, doing this when somebody else is driving. Okay, maybe sometimes I was driving and I was doing it, but anyway, we all make mistakes. Please forgive me. Anyway, so the point of the story is I started noticing that there really was a culture. Like as I would drive past, I would, if it was morning time, I would see people sitting together having breakfast. I saw some people look like they were having happy hour, looked like some people lived there and other people were guests, right? So this concept of domicile, no matter all walks of life, it is something that people have, that animals have, and things like that. So I just tell you that short anecdote, or probably was a little long, I'm being a little long-winded in this video, but to understand and give you a concept of what does it mean to be domiciled. This is the place that you intend to return, even if you are currently residing elsewhere, right? Elsewhere. This is where you're trying to return to. Okay, so now business entities, so that's individuals. Business entities are deemed to reside in any judicial district where the entity is subject to personal jurisdiction with respect to the action in question. A business entity is deemed to reside in any judicial district where the entity is subject to personal jurisdiction with respect to the action in question. So once again, let's go back to personal jurisdiction. What is this personal jurisdiction? Okay, personal jurisdiction refers to the power that a court has to make a decision regarding the party being sued in the case, right? So if a business entity is being sued, if that judicial district has, if the business entity resides in the judicial district where they have personal jurisdiction with respect to the action in question, right? So where they reside and the action in question are both important in deciding who has the where the venue should be located. So a business entity is deemed to reside in any judicial district where the entity is subject to personal jurisdiction with respect to the action in question. So the business resides there. Okay, they're subject to personal jurisdiction about this action in question for this lawsuit. All right, foreign defendants. A defendant who is not a resident of the United States, whether a US citizen or an alien, may be sued in any judicial district. So, I mean, it's kind of like, too bad, so sad. You are not a resident of the United States. That means that any judicial district is fair game. And that's just what it is. So now here's a special note. The rules to determine residence for venue purposes are different than the rules to determine citizenship for jurisdiction purposes. So let's just take a look at that for a minute, because I'm still trying to process and understand this, right? What exactly does that mean? What exactly does that mean? And honestly, I'm not 100% sure. So let's see if we can figure it out together. So here we have residency for venue purposes, right? Because we're talking about the fact that the rules to determine residence for venue purposes are different than the rules to determine citizenship for jurisdiction purpose. So remember, to determine for venue purposes, a natural person, including an alien lawfully admitted for permanent residence in the United States, shall be deemed to reside in the judicial district where he is domiciled. So if you are a natural person, what is an unnatural person? Is that like a robot? Okay, but anyway, if you're a person, right? I'm assuming a natural person is like a human versus like a corporation, which is an entity on its own, right? Not a robot. Is it a robot? I don't think it's a robot. I think it means a human person, right? So a natural person includes an alien lawfully admitted for permanent residence in the United States shall be deemed to reside in the judicial district in which the person is domiciled. So where you intend to return, that is your residency for venue purposes. An entity with the capacity to sue and be sued in its common name where applicable by law, whether or not incorporated. So if you are a sole proprietorship, if you are a partnership, regardless, you are an entity, shall be deemed to reside if a defendant in any judicial district in which such defendant is subject to the court's personal jurisdiction with respect to the civil action in question, and if a plaintiff only in the judicial district in which it maintains its principal place of business. All right, so if you're a plaintiff, where you have your principal place of business, if you're a defendant, in this case, in any judicial district in which such a defendant is subject to the court's personal jurisdiction with respect to the civil action in question. So we're going back to that thing. As an entity, it depends not just where you're principally located, but it depends on the action in question for this suit. Thirdly, a defendant not resident of the United States may be sued in any judicial district. Okay, so those are the three things to determine, just to review, to determine residency for venue purposes, right? So now let's talk about determining citizenship for jurisdiction purposes. And here we have some something here that's going to help us on the internet to understand that. This is called from scholarsmu.edu, citizenships for purposes of diversity jurisdiction. So let's talk about the general principles of, in this case, state citizenship we're going to talk about. So the diversity jurisdiction of the federal courts extend to civil actions between citizens of different states. But what makes one a citizen of a state? The 14th Amendment of the Constitution provides that all persons born or naturalized in the United States are subject to the jurisdiction thereof, are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. So once again, we're talking about where you reside, where you're domiciled to, where do you plan to return to, has been interpreted to mean more than to be temporary living in the state. It means to be domiciled in the state. Thus, to be a citizen of a state within the meaning of the diversity provision, a natural person must be both one, a citizen of the United States, and two, domiciled within the state, right? So whether or not one is a citizen of a particular state for diversity purposes is to be determined by federal law, not by the law of any state. Not federal law, not by the law of any state. That determines. So when we are talking about your citizenship, right, your citizenship for jurisdiction purposes, here we have it. You're a citizen of the United States and you're domiciled within that state. This is the place that you plan on returning. All right, guys, this video was longer than I intended it to be, but I feel like the information is in my head and on this video. So we are talking about venue, not a place for your wedding, not a place for, hello, a party. No, not that kind of venue. We are talking about serious things here. We are talking about the law. And venue determines the judicial district in which a lawsuit may be filed or commenced. Over and out, guys. Once again, this is Devaney Wilmot for Legally Raven Hair, Legally Norwet, legally black-haired, not legally blonde. All right, tune in next time where we will be discussing change of venue, which is what I would have been trying to do if it had rained at my wedding. Bye. Have a great weekend.